guys, welcome to the world of your bowl of noodles, slurp noodles, and chat. I am the host, Jordan Ibukwe, and today we have a very special guest. Please give it up for Isabelle Enriques. She's an amazing person. She's actually the founder of She's in Office, which is a political organization. Please go check her out on social media, Instagram, and also she helps elect women in office and end gender-based violence. So that is incredible. Please go check her out. And thank you so much for being here, Isabelle. You're absolutely phenomenal. And let's get into the interview. So, Isabelle, do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself, who you are, and what you do?
Okay, awesome. Hi, everybody. My name is Isabelle. I'm 17 years old. I am a senior from Oahu, Hawaii. I started She's in Office, which is my nonprofit, back in January of 2025. As Jordan has already mentioned, She's in Office is a political organization that helps elect more women into office to close the gender gap between elected officials and also end gender-based violence worldwide. So She's in Office originally started as a nationwide organization, but we recently expanded back in September of 2025 to an international organization. So currently, She's in Office has a presence in over 45 different states around the United States, and we also have a presence in 47 different countries, most predominantly in North America, South America, Europe, and Asia.
That is honestly phenomenal. And I tell my viewers again, go check her out on Instagram. She's absolutely amazing. I will also link her Instagram on the bio below. So if you want to go check it out, please go check it out. And I do want to go into the first question, and I want to know what inspired you to advocate for greater representation of women in political leadership?
Yeah, of course. Thank you for the question. What inspired me the most to start She's in Office and overall to create the mission is because I had the opportunity of volunteering on a multiple different platforms and political campaigns throughout my life. I originally started getting involved in politics when I was 9, so it has been about coming up on 8 years now that I started getting involved, and I noticed that when I started volunteering for campaigns that were run by women, including women elected officials. Most specifically, Vice President Kamala Harris's run for President of the United States. I noticed that myself, Vice President Harris, and the rest of the campaign team that were predominantly women, we faced a lot of backlash, and not because of our political views. A lot of it came from our gender. There was a lot of stereotypes that came into play that women shouldn't lead, women shouldn't be the president, women are too emotional to be politicians. A lot of it came from that alongside the political biases that we had. So originally, with when I thought of She's in Office, I wanted to come up with a strategic way to help women feel more comfortable in expressing their passions. And with my passion being politics, I decided to incorporate that into She's in Office. So although She's in Office is a political organization, we're also nonpartisan. So we invite women and girls of all different political backgrounds, no matter if they're a Democrat, Republican, a leftist, a conservative, no matter what they believe in politically, they're invited to join She's in Office because the overall goal is to come together and express why misogyny has such a big impact on politics and what we can do to stop it.
I do love when you just touched on the stereotypes of women because I feel like women are much more powerful than men think. We can do a lot of great stuff, and especially Kamala Harris, that campaign run gave me a heart attack, literally. So I get what you mean. It was intense, but the fact that if you include even just race itself, she's a black woman as well running for office. So it's even more just stereotypes throwing in all that about. But I'm glad that you did touch on that because honestly, those are one of the barriers that I feel like that a lot of political, especially women in politics, face. Just that label that we're too soft or we're too emotional to handle the rigorous tax of politics. But really, we can handle it. It's just if you give us the platform and the voice, we can do whatever we want. But I do want to get into more of the influence and how does having more women in political positions influence policy outcomes?
Thank you so much for the question. So predominantly politics since the United States became a country. I'm just going to speak from the United States specifically because that's how She's in Office started. When the United States became a country officially in 1776, it was all men that wrote the Constitution. There was no women involved in the process, and women didn't really start having a presence in politics until the early 1900s, and most of them were white women. So alongside She's in Office, although we mainly focus on electing more women, we also help support women of color, especially Black and Native women, because Black and Native women are are the most historically underrepresented groups throughout the world, specifically in politics. I want to also touch up on how um, Black and Native women are also underrepresented in the United States specifically, since that is how She's in Office started. So having more women in political positions influences positive outcomes, because it brings more of a diverse voice to the table. We're so used to seeing a lot of men, specifically white men, in politics, and women of color and women in general are just unrepresented as a whole. But it's so important to have diverse perspectives in politics, especially when it comes to things that relate to women's rights. For example, the Equal Marriage Act, such as with women can't change their last names after they get married, and they can't put that in their driver's license or their ID, meaning that they can't vote after they get married. There's another really big example that's been talked about a lot in politics, especially over the last few years, especially pertaining to reproductive freedom. So that's one of the biggest things that women need to have access to, because reproductive freedom isn't just abortion. Reproductive freedom also relates to different types of cancer screenings. It relates to getting to having research on endometriosis, and having access to menstrual equity. These different type of policy issues can't be made by one group. It can't just be made by men. Women need to have a voice at the table, and overall politics needs to have a diversity of opinion, not just centered around one specific group.
That's exactly what you mean. Honestly, what you just said is very important and vital because I feel like women are underrepresented in many areas, especially not just in politics. I know that more women have gotten more involved in like medical, a lot like lawyers. I've seen much more women in like taking business roles. It's phenomenal how we've grown to become such a more diverse society and accepting of women as roles. But of course, we still have the 800 like 1800 like mindset in our minds when we start talking about like other things too. And I had a talk with a woman and what was the country? It was Uganda, and we were talking about period poverty, especially in girls. And it's like issues like this, like women are still being are not taking into consideration when we're talking about certain things that we have to go through, like period poverty. That shouldn't be an issue. In a utopian world, I feel like women shouldn't have to deal with having to worry about where to get pads or like having to get like tampons or something, because that should be taken care of. That should be taken into like consideration. And like you said, if women have more voice and have more like that impact in political range, I feel like that problem would be long gone, especially in countries all over the world. But I want to understand, how can political parties be held accountable for promoting gender equity in their candidate selection?
That's a really good question. So I believe that political parties can be held accountable by selecting by choosing in their selection of who their candidates should be, is by looking at their policies and what they bring to the table. You know, women aren't here just to fill a quota, just to fill a thing of diversity. They need to look at it as, you know, how are they going to impact the groups that they represent. So, for example, I'm going to use Kamala Harris as an example because I talked about her a little bit. What Kamala Harris brought to the table as a Black and Indian woman is that she wanted to bring a representation to the table, not just to fill a quota, but so everybody can feel represented. And it's especially important for young women to see themselves represented, especially women of color to see themselves represented in politics, because we're not used to seeing that happen. And so when parties select who their candidates should be, they need to look at how much action they're going to take, not just what they're going to what they say they're going to do, but what they're actually planning on how to get there. So, for example, if a candidate is focusing on reproductive freedom, they need to look at, okay, what are the steps are we going to take to help make sure that reproductive freedom doesn't only exist, but making sure it's accessible, because reproductive freedom isn't just one centralized idea. Reproductive freedom isn't accessible anywhere everywhere, especially even if it is like in a blue state, for example, where reproductive freedom generally isn't under attack as much. There's also things we need to touch up on, like rural communities, especially like women living in rural communities don't have equitable access to these types of things, especially, you know, purchasing pads and tampons for their periods, or having access to go to the hospital if they need to get an abortion. Um, so making sure that candidates have like a forefront idea on how they're going to take action in all these different ideas and what they want to put in their platform, and making sure that it's not just performative activism, that they're actually speaking from the heart and they know what they're doing, and knowing and having a plan on how they're going to get there.
Exactly. Like just towards the end, you said that like it's actually like meaning it from the heart. But I feel like a lot of politicians, if we're just putting gender aside, don't consider they will say stuff and then give it 2 or 3 years, they won't be like, where is the thing that you just said that you're gonna do, but then you're not doing it now? So it's like we have I feel like especially with women, I feel like a lot of women will take in consideration as well of what we want as women and not just men speaking for women because that doesn't make sense, you know? So, like you said, it would be exercised a lot too, because I feel like a lot of policies are just hidden under the rug. Once you say it, give it a few years, it won't be said again. Trust me. It's just a lot of messiness in politics, but just clearing that up, just what you said, is beautiful because honestly, we need more just representation and as well as women in the table discussing women things and helping provide women the necessities they need. But I want to go into media and how do media portrayals affect public perceptions of women in political powers?
So, especially in media, I'm going to talk specifically about social media because that's one of the most common influences in politics, especially now. So, social media, it's really easy to have a lot of propaganda spread around,
Yes.
especially stereotypes regarding women. That's why we hear so much of, oh, women can't do this, women can't do that. Women aren't qualified to be in leadership because they get emotional when they're on their periods, which isn't entirely true because everybody gets emotional. It's not just women, it's men too.
No,
Like, everybody is at course to make irrational decisions, but it's not just women making irrational decisions. That can be anybody. So when you focus on one centralized idea and putting out this idea that women can't do this because they're this, or women can't do this because they have too much sexual influence. Sorry, I don't mean to you talk about like inappropriate stuff. That's just like an actual example. Um, but there's so many different rumors and different speculations and inaccurate stereotypes regarding women. So when you look at different types of media, especially social media, because it's so easy to spread something around with just one singular tweet, um, everything can get twisted up so easily, and that's how stereotypes become such a big thing. Especially with AI too. There's a lot of different ways you can portray everybody in a different light, not just politicians, but even like influencers. They could be doctors, they could just be literally anybody on social media. AI is dangerous. AI can be useful in different types of ways, but it is like a dangerous thing to use it, and you have to use AI in a way where it's effective and it's not going to harm anybody. We've especially seen AI generated images of politicians, not doing great things, but it wasn't even true. So that's how AI is playing a very big role in politics now, and it's becoming a highly dangerous thing. AI is being used for sexual exploitation for young women, especially. So when you look at media and AI, sorry, when you look at these two things combined together, it gets dangerous. And although it is important for people to express their voice, it's important that people express their voices when it comes straight from the heart and with accuracy too. When you're actually like utilizing facts and details on how these things come together, and not just you saying, oh, she did this, but there's no evidence behind it, so it just becomes a rumor that circulates round and round. And not even in speaking outside of politics too, we see this a lot in bullying in schools as well. Like it's kind of like going to school and like somebody spreads a rumor about somebody else, but it wasn't even true to begin with, so it just becomes a whole mess. And that's exactly what's happening in politics now.
right. Politics, I just say, it's just, if we have to be very honest, it's literally just little kids on a playground just discussing why I don't like your opinion. Because it's funny to me. I always see these TikToks of like politicians and when they're in like parliament or just in Congress and they're discussing, and the back and forth is just so messy. But honestly, like AI it's getting super dangerous. I think it was that White House that posted something, or one politician that posted something about AI towards another politician, and then it got viral. But if you've seen the thing, I don't want to like mention the name out, but of course, it was just like really messy and just so unprofessional for just really. And so, like you said, and if we had to like erase just race and just gender, we're all human in the end of the day. And so we all make, like you said, irrational mistakes. We are going to say some things that might not be true, but in the end of the day, our gender and our skin tone shouldn't have to already like label us as something or someone because of what we look like. So I really just, that's really a powerful message that you spoke out to the audience. And before we continue, I want to tell my viewers out there, please go check out She's in Office. It's an amazing political organization. It's youth led. It's very phenomenal. And if so, is it okay if our viewers are allowed to start chapters in maybe their current states as well?
Yeah, of course. We're still looking for chapter leaders in about 26 different states. I think that's the last statistic. But chapters can be started anywhere across the world. Since we're an international organization, we invite anybody, regardless of what country or what Commonwealth they're from, to apply for She's in Office and start a chapter there.
Exactly. And you can also help like extend the impact. So please, if you want to go check her out, I'll link it in the bio. But going forth back into the episode, I do want to go into more of gender-based violence, and I want to know, what do you believe are the root causes of gender-based violence in society?
So I believe that the root causes of gender-based violence can be influenced by different ways. It depends on the country and how the country's culture is uprised. So there are many different cultures where women are portrayed as lesser than men. And culture is that's why I believe diversity is important, because it's important to talk about different cultures um, and how it influences these different types of things. So I'm going to talk about the culture of the United States, for example. So, for example, in the United States, we've seen time and time again of men just being elected into office and portraying women as lesser than, or they should only be housewives, and that's looked at as a lot of across a lot of different countries too. It's not just the United States that women are only good to be housewives and to give birth to their kids. They shouldn't have jobs. They shouldn't get an education, all these different types of things that portray women in a negative light, and that we're incapable of doing something. So I think where gender-based violence comes into play with this, into play with these different type of patriarchal systemic things, is because men control a lot of different things. Men control the world. There's a saying that's saying that this is a man's world and women just have to live in it, but it shouldn't have to be that way. It should be in everybody's world. It shouldn't be just a man's world. It shouldn't be just a woman's world. It should be the world for everybody. But where gender-based violence comes into play with that is just because people assume that men are better than, that men are stronger than us, that men have more power than us, that men are smarter than us. But that's not always true. Everybody's smart. Everybody's smart in their own different ways. I don't think I'm the smartest person ever, but neither is anybody else. Nobody's the smartest person ever. It's just, everybody's capable of different things, and that's what She's in Office is trying to bring to the table. We're trying to tell people that women have so much power, and when people acknowledge that women have power, then gender-based violence is attacked against. Like, gender-based violence will become a lesser issue if people just let women have a voice at the table. And that's why I keep saying that, representation and diversity is so important, especially across different races and different genders.
I was Culture is very important if we're going to talk about just gender and how like the traditional housewife and female, because honestly you have the trad wives, we all know that, but if we're talking about just culture, like Asian culture, I was talking to a lot of people that I've talked to in Liberia and just African countries as well, activists have specifically touched on like girls, like especially like traditional like marriages or like maybe child marriages as well. Like girls are just traded off to their like to be married at a certain age, and automatically they have to start making like families, they have to start doing this and that, like be the original housewife at like age 16. And so it's really, it's just, it's, I know it's culture, but we have to like hold it a little on, like, okay, this is too much. Like, she's only a girl, she's only 16, she's this young, she needs to live her life. And like you said, if diversity is so important, because if we're talking more about this, then we can maybe make ways that we can also balance culture, but also balance modernity. So I love that you really touched on that topic as well about diversity and culture. And of course, gender-based, it's been enrooted in the world for long, 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 long time ago. So knowing that the world is still trying to heal and still trying to mend, like bring balance to the table, it'll take some time, but like having people like you speak on that and just bring more empowerment to the table is phenomenal. And I can entrust that we will be fine in the future. So I also want to go more onto like legislation, and I want to know, how can legislation be improved or better enforced to protect survivors of gender-based violence?
So I believe that when important piece of legislation, or just like a legislative body in general, is the United Nations. The United Nations, for anybody, any of the viewers that aren't super familiar with the United Nations, the United Nations is a group of body from multiple different countries where they come together and they talk about issues happening in their countries and in creating international law. So international law is especially important because gender-based violence is a problem across every single country. It happens everywhere, and it's not just in like one region. It's not just in one continent. It's not just one country. It's everywhere. So the United Nations need to take more action on improving the legislation of women. And I know that one specific body of the United Nations that takes a lot of great action on this is the United Nations Women's Forum. The Women's Forum mainly focuses on gender-based violence in a way that, portrays gender-based violence as not just a white feminist issue. It's an intersectional issue that happens especially a lot to women living out in other countries. This is especially a problem with women of color. So the way that the Women's Forum of the United Nations expresses gender-based violence is that gender-based violence also comes into portray with racism as well. So what the United Nations Women's Forum does is that they talk about gender-based violence in a lot of different countries and how it impacts women in these specific countries. So for example, in Sudan, there's a large economic inequality, especially for women. So they can't access food, they can't access clean water, they can't access clean clothes, etc. And although Sudan has an economic issue worldwide, it especially impacts women because gender-based violence exists in Sudan. So the United Nations is a really great advocate, and they do a lot of on-the-ground work, especially in these countries, which is really important. When you have ambassadors from the United Nations coming in there, because it tells a story and what these women are going through, and it's not just through what is seen on TV. It's not just propaganda. It's like they're on the ground. They're on the ground seeing this happen, and they're taking this back to the United Nations, no matter where the meeting is, if it's in Belgium, if it's in New York, etc. They go back to these meetings in the United Nations and they say, hey, this is happening in this country, so we need to do something about it. So what the United Nations can do further is just using the Women's Forum as a tool to talk about, how sexual violence is impacting women, how gender-based violence is impacting women in different countries. And, overall just sharing this messaging and having that on the ground work and talking about what's really happening in real time.
Honestly, United Nations is a phenomenal platform that gives many people the voice to speak up and stand and advocate for their country. And I love the Women's Forum as well. I know a lot of like organizations, climate organizations are part of the United Nations. And so I love that United Nations can be a place where voices, no matter the race, no matter the gender, no matter who you are, can be just a diverse area of conversation. And there's just as well as disagreements and agreements, but it's a place that we can know that can help make our world a better place. And hearing the stories of women being on ground in Sudan, especially in Congo, because we have to bring awareness to those countries as well. Ukraine, Palestine, it is just it's a crazy amount of wars going on. And so on both sides, we can say no matter what sides you do pick, women are being somehow mistreated and badly brutalized in their countries, no matter who you are. And so we have to bring more voice and more volume to their stories and as well go like that's the other thing too. Like some people are too scared. Like you need to if you're a news like outlet, go get the news, go share it to the world because I'm so sick of censoring. Like why should I have to go on TikTok to go look for the news? Like it's unbelievable. But honestly, just thank you for touching that United Nations and anyone who is interested, please go check them out. Please go check out the programs that they have because they're very useful. It's very well, and even you yourself can get involved as well. So I want to know what are some effective community-based strategies you've seen for reducing gender-based violence?
Some effective strategies that I've seen that's been really useful against gender-based violence is using advocacy and voice. So I feel like social media, it can be a powerful tool in both a negative and a positive light. But to speak in a positive light, social media has been a really great tool because it's really easy to spread information, which can also be seen as a negative thing. But in a positive way, speaking of social media in a positive way, um, social media can be really good to access news that isn't accessible everywhere else, because the news can often use propaganda in a way that doesn't shed as much light on women as it should be, and when they do, it's a lot of the times inaccurate. So social media has been really good, especially in countries. I'm going to talk about like Palestine specifically. Palestine has had a lot of voice and a lot of messaging on social media, because there's been journalists that have talked about Palestine on the ground, and a lot of these journalists are women, and women speaking specifically about their experiences there. Um, we don't see this often on the news like CNN, Fox, BBC, but a lot of women in Gaza weren't able to access humanitarian aid, and including that humanitarian aid, they weren't able to access pads, tampons, menstrual cups, all those types of things that women use for their periods, because the humanitarian corridor was blocked. So, and when these women talked about their issues on social media, it was way easier for people to spread the message and talk about, what's really happening. So I believe that community-based strategies are really important just by sending the message. It's not always where you need to be on the ground, because sometimes it's not accessible to be on the ground 24/7 for everybody. Accessibility is a really important thing in community strategizing, and I believe that accessibility is a really good tool, and social media is a really good tool for accessible protesting and organizing in that way, because it's so much easier to get messaging spread out that way.
That's like you said, that's very important as well. And everything you said was phenomenal. And also, like, just with BBC not showing as much of what's happening in Gaza, censorship is also a major thing that we should also take note of when it comes to those major news outlets, censoring the voices of women, censoring their stories. It's all just like downplaying like the harsh realities that many women have to face all around the world. And that's the thing, we're not understanding that. Like, yes, we live in a great economy, like not a great economy, but we live in an okay society that gives us water, that gives us food, fridge, and everything like that. But go to parts of China, Asia, Africa, Europe, women are not given that. There's girls that have to walk miles to miles just to get some water for their families. So honestly, we need to uplift more stories of women and what they have to go through, especially girls, because girls do go through some stuff and that leads us up to become women. So honestly, if we can help just empower the next generation of girls like us and to like help them lead better and just to give them the mindset that they can do anything that they want to do and no one can stop them, that's powerful and that can literally change the world and create major just impacts all around. But I do want more go into the second to last question, and I want to know, how do intersecting identities, race, class, disability, etc., affect how gender-based violence is experienced and addressed?
Thank you for the question. So overall, I believe that feminism is a very powerful tool, but we see some critiques of feminism, and one of the main causes is because white women are on the forefront of feminism, and it shouldn't be that way because white women aren't the only women out there. There's also Pacific Islander women, there's Black women, there's Asian women, there's Native women, there's Latina women. There's so many different races, races and ethnicities out there, and it shouldn't just be one centralized idea of what feminism is, because feminism isn't only one or two things. It's multiple different things across multiple different countries. And like kind of how you mentioned earlier, like intersectionality is so important, especially when race, disability, age, and what country they're from comes into play. For example, gender-based violence affects everyone differently. Things that we see with femicide. We've seen in the Democratic Republic of Congo that gender-based violence comes into play there because women are being sexually assaulted by the military. We see in Hawaii, my home specifically, that 1 out of 3 of victims of sex trafficking are Native Hawaiian girls, specifically that are within the age of 15 to 18. So gender-based violence is such a very broad thing. There's a whole spectrum of gender-based violence. There's multiple different things that come to play with it, and that's why feminism is a really powerful tool. But we need to have intersectional feminism. We shouldn't have feminism where it's just for white women. Feminism needs to be accessible for all women, regardless of what gender they are, regardless of how old they are, regardless of what country they're from, regardless of what community they're from. So, feminism needs to be for everybody, and we need to work on having more women of color at the forefront of the movement.
That's amazing. Like you said, feminism does not end with just white women. It begins, of course, with women, but it goes out towards all women. It's for all women. It's just not for just one race of women. I do believe that feminism needs to be addressed more and educate women about it because, hey, you can do this. You don't have to live in this systematic way. You can be a governor, you can be a politician, you can be a doctor. It doesn't matter who you are. It doesn't matter if you're a woman, you can do whatever you want. And just implying that towards the next generation of youth, just saying that that's in front of young girls, that is what matters in the end of the day. And I love that your political organization is doing that for us and is making a wave and a change for everyone. But I do want to go into the ending question. And it's a little funny question because I always ask people this towards the end of the question. But I want to know, what is your favorite bowl of noodles?
My favorite bowl of noodles is 100% bulldog ramen.
Yeah. I
I
love
love ramen. It is so good. I know I shouldn't be eating it all the time, but I do. Like I can't help it. It's amazing.
Girl, when I tell you I be eating them like ramen noodles, the cup ramen, like it's a daily like trend. I just love them. And I don't care what people say. I know it has chemicals that are bad for me, but I still eat them and I will still bring money to their pockets. I'm so sorry because it is so good. But thank you so much, Isabel. You were absolutely phenomenal. Your words are exceptionally wise. And just keep making a change and please keep bringing a platform for women to be in political organizations and positions. And just thank you so much. And just thank you for representing who you are and what you do for your country.
Thank you.